Thank you, Arun, and welcome to this panel to discuss the organizational leadership towards sustainability. It's a pleasure and delight to have my friends Vinay Awasthi, a worldwide head of print supply chain at HP, Millie Gillon, global head client experience, Standard Chartered Bank, and Manoj Saxena, chairman, Rosetta Net, Singapore, GS1 Digital Standards and Advisory Board, Global CIO Forum. He's also the Senior Director for Data and Digital Transformation at Maxian Solar Technologies. So welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here and discuss. And when we talk about sustainability and leadership, we have less than a decade, to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030, to make this world a more sustainable place. And now, since we, all of us are here in Singapore, a quick flash is that Singapore has embarked on making one of the world's largest floating solar panel farms, spanning an area equivalent to 45 football fields and producing enough electricity to power the island's 5 water treatment plants, which is something like a 60 megawatt peak solar photovoltaic farm. This is the future. So it's very interesting. The sustainability needs to be at the core of business practices, and this requires strong commitment from every company leadership. Sustainable leadership plays a vibrant part in the organization of organizational learning and business transformation. So, Millie, my first question to you is that, we have seen that leaders define their vision and they get their people to follow their goals. Do you see this leadership paradigm changing? How do you define sustainable leadership?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure for me to join you. So what we have seen is over the last few years, there's always been a little interest here, a little interest there in sustainability. Yes, we hear the general population, but talking and hearing are very different from taking action. And this year has been very different at Standard Chartered in the sense that we have created sustainability as one of our 3 bold stands to really help and impact in a positive way the communities that we have a footprint in. So from a leadership perspective, it's going from top down and bottoms up. So hopefully we can meet somewhere in the middle and make a change. And it's really shifting from, it's no longer just some side project. It's more of a cultural shift, having dedicated people, having dedicated resources. And of course, that is extremely difficult, especially with still trying to maintain and run our business and continuing to pivot and move ahead in our core business. But what I'm seeing this year is a major shift and a major dedication to that, in the sense that now in each of our businesses, we have a chief sustainability officer, as well as we're also figuring out different ways from the institutional side and from the consumer side, how can we incorporate that into our investable assets? But there is one issue that still exists, and I'm happy to go in more into detail into that later on in this discussion. And that's really around awareness and external communications that we're really trying to address.
Yes, awareness and communication is of paramount importance. So, Vinay, over to you. Wanting to know from you that business leaders must rise to the challenge of making business sustainability a workable strategy. And what are some of the challenges that leaders are facing as they work towards bringing business transformation for sustainable goals? What do you think?
I mean, I think there is a lot that can be first and foremost done in this space. And thank you for having me over to kind of like have this conversation. There are challenges for everybody. I think, if we look at business leaders, if we look at government leaders, if we look at our own lives as consumers and individuals, right? Everybody can always point towards challenges that you have. They could be related to costs. They could be related to business processes that you need to change. There could be related to just habits that we have, right? I mean, as individuals have habits, you don't want to take a reusable bag, or you are lazy and take a plastic bag or many plastic bags from the markets. There are business habits like that, right? I think we have many of the things that have been done from product design or logistics or the way we operate our factories, which have been earlier not designed for dealing with sustainability or really having this as a top priority, right? So there are challenges can be a lot, but I think most important thing is what are we doing about it? How intentional are we as we work on our sustainable goals? How methodical we are? Do we have a framework with which we can operate? Supply chain, as you see, right, is a chain. It is not just your internal organization, but your suppliers, your sub-suppliers, the entire logistics chain. How do they operate, and can you lead them, right, together? Not just your own organization, but through your organization, taking a very firm stand on what we want to drive towards supply chain, absolute carbon footprint, the framework that we want to drive. You want to lead the entire supply chain of your business partners, of your suppliers, your sub-suppliers, the entire ecosystem, right? So that's where we are, and I'm looking forward to having more conversation about how HP is thinking of driving sustainable impact in its supply chain.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, like intention, framework, and driving the entire supply chain. So, Manoj, over to you. How organizations are transforming from corporate social responsibility towards key performance indicator driven for sustainability, and why now?
Yeah, hi, Malvika. Glad that you asked that question, and why now is the key part, right? I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, everybody had this as a CSR to start with. If you're looking 1 decade back, I mean, every time you have a financial report reported, the CSR will be the last sheet of a financial report of any organization. But not anymore. If you see the current situation of the floods happening in China, in Japan, in India, glaciers melting, right? People used to think it's more of a modeling of science just to kind of bring the urgency, but they're able to see the impact right now, the way the mother nature is behaving. We're not acting in time, right? So it's for us, this generation, to make sure that we act now so that we have a sustainable environment or earth left for the next generations to come, right? So a couple of things happening. Why now is very interesting. One is the nature itself is alarming. A lot of governments are coming together, the way I see it, right, from Europe, from US, and from Asia. Singapore government, especially the way you started off this call, they're having goals for next 10 years, next 20 years, moving from from a normal energy to a renewable energy, from an EV space and all that, right? There's targeted approach there. And not only that, I'm very heartened to see that the new generation are very, very concerned about the climate change. Even the things they buy, the kind of materials they buy, how it's being manufactured, and where it's being used by animal testing and all that stuff, right? So the awareness is kind of growing in, all 360-degree force. And I'm very happy that I've joined a sustainable renewable energy firm, Maxion, as Senior Director for Data and Digital, where we are trying to power the positive change with an impact of how a renewable solar energy can kind of save the world or leave the world for a better place to live in, right? So I'm very excited to be part of this journey and see how we can influence and have this leadership going.
Okay. Let's move and see what's happening currently in sustainability in organizations. And here at Singapore, the Monetary Authority of Singapore is working on a comprehensive and a long-term strategy to make sustainable finance a defining feature of Singapore's role as an international financial center, just as wealth management and fintech have become. So, Millie, my question to you would be that talk to us about sustainable initiatives currently in Standard Chartered Bank, and what are the key focus areas in your products and services?
Sure. So it's a few different pieces, both internally as well as externally. Internally, we're constantly trying to pivot towards and accelerate moving towards net zero in the ways that we work internally, but then also in the ways that we invest. So externally, from the client perspective, really trying to ensure that we're selecting the right investable assets that will promote sustainability, but then also trying to ensure that we have the right level of awareness to our customers so that they have that trust, not just with us, but they also have that trust in these specific investments. And then from the institutional side, it's really trying to find that right balance between what is right and what is profitable. And over time, those will converge. It's just trying to figure out what is the right mix, testing and learning.
I see. So talk to us about Millie. There's certain how is Standard Chartered Bank, driving sustainability through its people as well?
So in terms of the way that we interact with each other in the office, when we go back to the office, the way that our makeup is, it is starting to really shift really quickly. For example, in some of our India branches, what we've done is completely take away everything that relates to paper for 1 week. Just a hard, cold turkey move and pivot, and seeing, well, what are the pain points and how can we address that? How can we fix that so that we can make that sustainable? So we can move much faster towards net zero.
Yeah, that's fantastic. In fact, listening into the executives and then figuring it out what is the best that is possible. I think that is really key. Thank you for that. And let's go to Vinay. Vinay, at HP, how do you see the journey towards creating products and solutions that are driving towards a circular and net zero carbon economy? And I know that the HP is doing a whole lot of stuff in that
Yeah.
area. So we would love to hear more on that.
So look, I mean, our vision, Malvika, is that we want to create the world's most sustainable supply chain. Okay, and you start off with having a very ambitious goal. So HP's ambitious goal is that we want to reduce the absolute carbon footprint by 50% by 2030. Okay, so we want to be very ambitious and we want to be beating those goals. Now, when you drive towards an ambitious goal, you also want to make sure that it is pretty comprehensive in how you drive that, right? So we have a framework, which is, we define it as people, planet, and community. Okay, so we drive across these three areas. So let me come to the planet part, because your question was more about that. The idea behind this planet was pillar is how do you reduce GHG emissions, right? Greenhouse generating emissions. How do you reduce that? So the framework is pretty simple, right? On the planet side, that you reduce, you reuse, and you recycle materials. But in order to drive that, you have to really start looking at, again, subsections of that. So circular economy, how do you drive suppliers and sourcing innovation for sustainable recycled materials, right? It is economic packaging, it is about closed loop in the factory, it is about paper, water, all those kind of things, right? Then you also work towards reducing waste and transition to sustainable material in factories and also in your distribution. So single-use plastics was something that I was mentioning, right? Packaging, making sure that they are, the right certifications are in place to drive that. We also want to increase our capabilities to drive more services, right? I mean, if people are not using materials as a use and throw, but using products towards saying, okay, when I'm done, there is another life that can be found for that, right? And that's more of a long-term thing. So we work a lot on working on our services in such a way that people can return their ink and toner cartridges, we can recycle those, etc., right? And then you look at also the production and logistics aspect to it. How do you have, what shipping options do you have? How do you design a network that is far more efficient? How do you redesign your distribution centers to be using more green grid, for example, right? How do you identify and enable a resilient supply chain across the network to mitigate these climate risks that we have, right? So these are some of the thoughts regarding how we are looking at establishing a really robust framework for driving planet pillar for us to reduce the GHG emissions. Okay?
Oh, fantastic. It's great to know, what all is happening there. Tell me how difficult it is to manage stakeholders, when you have this kind of supply chains, management that is to be done. How do you see yourself moving in finding solutions so that, everybody's, ideas are brought into the same platform?
Yeah. Look, I think nothing can be done without having people on board with what we are trying to drive, right? So this is internal management, this is individual contributors. You really have to empower the employees to contribute and raise awareness. If you look at any corporate structure, right, you will find everybody is concerned about costs. People are concerned about turnaround times. People are concerned around what's the strategy to be better and more competitive. How do you design products to be more competitive from a feature set point of view, right? We need to have similar discipline on sustainability, right? Is everybody getting involved in being on board to drive sustainability, right? Does every action that we take as a team or as a larger supply chain, how do we do that so that sustainability is first and foremost in our minds, right? So this is something which is very critical, and
Mhm.
you have to lead. I think there is no other way. If we don't lead, nobody else will take that leadership. That is what our belief is within HP, right? So we are going to take a very ambitious. We are already starting to come out and declare these things, so that when you declare your goals out there in the public as well, people can monitor people, and then you remain honest to those, right? So this is also very critical. And one other thing, right? This is not a choice. I think this is something that we completely realize. This is not a choice. You have to do it, and there will also be positive benefits for businesses when you do it. A lot of customers right now are very, very involved and concerned about what's happening to the planet, so they demand more sustainable products. They demand not just products that look and feels more sustainable, but also how they are made. So in the future, people will ask, where did you make them? How did you make them? What were the kind of energy sources you used? Did you have circular loop in your material processing in the factories? All those
Mhm.
things will be super important. So unless we take that leadership position, our entire supply chain won't be sustainable, right? So that's contrary to what our vision is, and that's why we want to drive this from a position of leadership, and then make sure that everybody comes along.
Yeah, position of leadership, and get everybody with the common values and beliefs. I think that's
Exactly.
a great,
Yeah.
great point over there. Yeah, thank you for that, Vinay. It is also interesting to note that Singapore aims to phase out internal combustion engine vehicles and have all vehicles run on cleaner energy by 2040. And it's a very interesting fact here. And especially, I want to put this question to Manoj, who's part of the Maxian Solar Technologies. Manoj, with your experience also in digital standards, and what are the key focus areas on sustainable leadership and circular economy within Maxian Solar Technologies?
Yeah. Uh, for us, we are a little glad, Malvika, to be in the industry where we kind of promote clean energy, right? All the footprints, the products we sell, not only within Maxion, any consumer who buys our product is going to be in the journey, right? By being a user of a consumer clean energy kind of stuff, right? So focusing on the clean kind of a United Nations goals, we are having at least 4 goals which we have narrowed down to see how do we make this clean energy more affordable. The more than 700 million over people in the world who cannot have a affordable clean energy, right? So that's being our goal in our product and innovation roadmap, to say that it's not only the solar panels, and how do you make it affordable for being it more inclusive at every part of the world. So that's one of the key strategies which as a company we have, and we take a lot of pride in that. And also be responsible for what we consume and produce within our own factories, right? So like Vinay mentioned, and like Billy mentioned, how do we make sure that we be an example of more natural energy usage, and maybe not only energy, how do you have less water wastage, or how do you have a waste disposal process in place so that it's not contaminating the earth back, right? So we have very careful on that. And above and beyond, we try and use our products and services in terms of reducing inequalities, uh, especially in some refugee camps of the world, and wherever it's needed more. I think we take our CSR responsibility to install our panels and have clean waters, and also add into that goal, right? More promoting towards peace, justice, and stronger institutional values there in the sense. Internally, we also promote everybody to be an ambassador, to follow like how you switch on light or switch off lights, or even for a simple example, like when I had my first team lunch, we all decided to go for a plant-based burger, for example, right? So it's more of a practice you lay upon from a corporate standpoint to the individual, and proud to be in the sweet spot, and see how we can drive this leadership in all angles to be making the energy more affordable for more and more industry and the global countries to use it and benefit from it, right?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, leadership, thought leadership, and wanting to, get the message across on circular economy and what all you can do here. That's interesting. Talk to us, Manoj, around any digital standards that you think are key here in terms of any kind of indicators that really highlight this kind of circular economy, and that will help the leaders to kind of say, yes, this is one of the focus areas to kind of look into so that business transformation can be brought out, and certain particular key indicators would be very important. What do you think would be those?
Yeah, technology always has been a critical part for any transformation, right? Standards are very close to my heart, being in GS1 for decades, and I'm seeing that moving towards an edge. Taking a theme of sustainability per se, right? For example, if you have all smart solutions of smart homes, or how do you make sure your aircon is kind of used based on, let's say the temperature is high and low, you don't have to use a remote, for example, right? Automatically, how you have sensors or IoT solutions coming into play that it kind of self-manages that, for example, having your temperature and climate, which kind of influences your home. That's some of the examples you can say, right? And basically, the Industry 4.0 technologies like IoT plays a major part in these kind of climate changes, the way I see it. In terms of finance and the MA's green finance thing, which you just highlighted earlier on, and some of the track and trace becomes very important. Vinay highlighted like how you make sure your suppliers give the suppliers also following the sustainable standards and all that, right? The track and trace for the end-to-end visibility becomes very key, and that's where standards like blockchain for track and trace for from where it starts and where the product ends, all the way going to bank, like people like Millie and Standard Chartered, they get the visibility of that standards, right? So that's where I think you like to get the ball rolling more from a theory and a paper-based documents to more digitalization and standards coming on. So we're working with Singapore government and a few other standards body to see how do we make this blockchain as a standard for green and invoice financing as one of the active projects which is running along. And also you'll see more and more people taking responsibility to buy the clean energy, right? So you probably see like an Amazon effect or a Lazada effect of a marketplace. People are more used to that term. That's why I'm using the term of an energy marketplace is how I'm seeing where technology again will come into play, where you can, you don't have to be a producer of energy. If you want to have a CSR goal set up and you want to buy clean energy to meet your goals, I think that's where the buy and sell of energy will start coming in. And you also talked about the EVs and the renewable energy space, those kind of things for batteries and all that. How do you reuse them? For example, that's going to be a huge industry. In Singapore is going on EV space. There's a lot of batteries will be having end of life. How do you kind of recycle them and bring it back into the active life, right? So a lot of those things in the ecosystem will start evolving, and technology is going to be the centerpiece to drive and collaborate and bring people together to accelerate this journey. That's how I see it.
Okay. Yeah, technology being the center of it all. Sustainable finance is the practice of integrating, environmental, social governance criteria into financial services to bring about sustainable development outcomes, including mitigating and adapting to the adverse effects of climate change. So, Millie, what do you think? What are your insights for the role of financial industry as drivers of sustainable transformation in the future? We would love to hear your insights on that.
So a few things. One is to really identify where are we investing our money? What is the impact to the overall climate change as well as the Earth, the planet? But then also, how can we continue to promote those new and smaller instances where we can make that impact? The other piece is from a more strategic perspective. What we do is we look at trends, our future trends. And right now, or this year, a lot of the future trends are all related to sustainability, whether it is planted, focusing on plant-based products, or it is around other types of areas. But I'll just take planted as an example. What does that have to do with financial services? Well, one is that we can start to incorporate that into our end-to-end journeys. And that could be either incentivizing specific types of providers that are focused on plant-based services or products and solutions. And then two is really trying to look at these different types of smaller organizations that are starting up and trying to help and mentor them, guide them, and then also invest with them.
Okay. Yeah.
Just one more comment on what Manoj just mentioned in terms of the ecosystem. I think that is so amazing and so super important, especially now that we have connected devices. And it's not just in the energy space that has a huge impact. It also has to do with all of the other more established industries, such as financial services, as well as the other industries out there. But how we could all collaborate together, even though if you think about it on the surface, energy and financial services, aside from trading, what does that have to do with each other? Tons. Yeah. So what we could possibly do is have integrated ecosystems together and support each other's value proposition that helps to promote the wellness of our planet.
Mhm. So the ecosystem is the key for the future. So thank you for that, Vinay. Let's go to you. Um, Share with us any trends that you're seeing in your industry at large that you are hearing in sustainability and business transformation as a result of this driver.
I think the biggest trend that I see is that now senior leaders are driving sustainability as a very, very important aspect of the company's charter, right? I think that's the biggest transformation that I'm seeing this. From profit making to customer support and service, servicing customers with the best suite of products and services and solutions. Now it is becoming a lot more than that, right? They want to do something um, for the planet, for the community, and for the employees as well, right? So this is something which is the single biggest trend. Now, what this will lead to is it will lead to really drive, having a lot of transformation come in. For example, right, sustainability is going to get more and more integrated in the decision-making process. Whenever you are deciding to make a factory move or onboarding a new supplier or awarding a business to, one, partner, right? Sustainable decision making will start coming in, and I think that's the biggest trend, which is what ultimately will get sustainability into all important considerations, and metrics will also evolve from that, right? I mean, on one hand, you can have things like how do you include recycled plastics into your products, right? How do you increase that percentage from 5, 10, 30 to more than 50% recycled plastic? And how do you go make a choice regarding the kind of energy usage that you will have in your factories? Is it going to come from a green grid? How are you going to drive, in terms of trends, sustainability as a marketing engine? So, for example, Malvika, if I come to you and saying, one printer or one computer, you have everything else it being equal in terms of its specifications, the way you know it, for a computer to operate. But one computer has a passport that tells you how it was transported, what kind of energy it used, what kind of recycled material it used, how much water it wasted or saved, versus the other that is a black box to you and doesn't tell you. What choice will you make? You will probably make a choice towards a more sustainable product, right? That's the trend that we have a vision for, and we really believe that it is bound to happen. It has happened in the food industry, right? I mean, everywhere we pay a little bit of a premium for an organic product, food product, because we don't want to put something that is inorganic or contains stuff that we don't want to put in our bodies. By having products that we use that will have that kind of a specification, will also help us care for what we are doing to our planet. And that's how I think the choices will have to go. That's the long-term trend that we need to all drive towards.
Thank you for that, Vinay. I mean, that's really interesting, and it encompasses the overall, vision for where we are moving with sustainability. Let's go to Manoj. Manoj, as you rightly said about technology, and technology will be crucial in smarter, ESG reporting, ratings, and investments. So I'm very curious to know, how do you see the leaders should have these technology discussions to accelerate the sustainability for their organizations, because tremendous is going to happen. Technology is going to sweep it out to bring about this kind of change within the organization. How do you see, and what do you think the leaders should be working out on the technology?
Yeah, I mean, as you rightly said, there's a lot of motivation for organization and the leaders to do something, right? So typically, if when you look at situations where there's transformation or a change or a shift of paradigm happening, right? I am a great fan of three parties need to come in, right? Government, industry, and education institutions. I'm quite a great fan of that triangular equation. It's very important there, right? And if you take a simple example of the climate exchange platform, which Standard Chartered has come out with public information, BBS, and even Temasek, for example, there are banks and government investors coming together. What they're doing is they're just trying to bring a platform for the leaders and the industries to come together to understand what is the framework, what are the standards, how do you measure, right? Because when something new comes up, people are very enthusiastic about the thing, but they don't know how to go about doing things, right? You need to have a framework, you need to have a guidelines to say, and And then that has to be recognized internationally, because most of us have an international organization over 100 countries, over 160 countries, right? So how do you make that happen cross borders, right? So that's, I think, is more from a silos to cross borders. That's why I wear a little hat of the other hat of standards consortium, which has been for a decade, and probably I'll see as far as I can go and help out in that arena. That's why I think leaders are kind of struggling to say which standard to follow, right? And where do I collaborate, and with whom do I collaborate, right? That's why this consortium come and play a major part, where it's neutral and not lopsided to a product or a company, right? I mean, to solve the problem together with the government and the education institution and the industry. And this is a good example of climate exchange, which Stanchart, DBS, and Tamak has come out as a good example of that. MAC is trying to do that. So each of them would need the other half. So leaders of all the three segments need to come together to create the greater impact for greater good and powering a positive change, like we say in Maxion. That's how I say it.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I think it's again get back into the ecosystem and how each of the stakeholders can come together and do much more. We are closing on time, and thank you so much for your time today. I think great insights, but we can't let you go before doing a rapid fire. Okay, so there's one rapid fire that will happen, one round. So if you're up for it, let's go. So Vinay, any particular book that is fueling your thoughts in leadership and sustainability?
Not so much books these days. I read a lot of articles about that. Books are very interesting, but sometimes they get frozen in time. Right now I'm reading a book about Homo Deus, okay, the human god. If you think of that, right, it talks a lot about human history and how the next few years will be on future, and very transformative. But other than that, I think on sustainability, I'm relying more and more on articles from New York Times and Washington Post and all that. So yeah.
Okay, good. Millie, what is that one particular thing that you would want to say today that will help in increasing awareness for sustainability?
That it is something that a lot of financial institutions, whether it is Standard Chartered or our direct competitors or our partners such as MasterCard or Visa, what we are doing is we're vetting out these different types of investment vehicles. It's okay to trust it. It's okay to not just sit on the sidelines and see what happens. And at the same time, that convergence that I mentioned earlier of doing what's right for our planet and profitability, it's coming. It's coming as soon as tomorrow. So it's best to just jump on that bandwagon and help and contribute in your own way.
Okay. Manoj, what is that one area of technology that would help us in getting to our sustainable goals that you would like to highlight?
I would say the Industry 4.0 revolution. So that's the one which is taking to the edge, and all smart solutions around it would be an area to watch out for, where a lot of collaborative solutions will come into. Just watch out for Industry 4.0 solutions. That's from my side.
All right, wonderful. So thank you once again for your great insights and valuable sharing across industries. And this is a great takeaway for our audiences to benefit from this session. I would like to thank once again Vinay Awasthi, Worldwide Head of Print Supply Chain HP, Millie Gillon, Global Head for Customer Experience, Senior Managing Director, Standard Chartered Bank, Manoj Saxena, Advisory Global CIO Forum, Chairman Rosetta Net Singapore GS1 Digital Standards, Senior Director Data and Digital Transformation, Maxim Solar Technologies. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Malvika.
Bye. Bye.